What up? Welcome to Homegrown Hustle, where local brilliance takes the center stage. I'm your host, Matt Eichmann. Together, we're about to embark on an inspiring journey. Our community thrives on the wisdom of insightful leaders that are right here in our backyard. And we're bringing their expertise to your ears. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your guide. Join us every week in celebrating innovation, guidance, and the power to inspire greatness. Let's explore the stories that shape our local business landscape, and together, let's ignite the spark of excellence.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homegrown Hustle. We're doing a special Homegrown Hustle episode here today with one of my good friends, Andrew Meyers. He's a state representative here around the lake. Over the years, I've got to know him really well, and we're at one of the places that everybody in the area knows and loves to visit. So, Andrew, I'm just really grateful for you taking the time to come out here and talk a little bit about what you got going on with your campaign and how it impacts the local community. So, Andrew, let's just get started. Like, door-to-door sales, pretty much, for a state representative. I would have never guessed, but that's literally the first time we met you. You came and knocked on our door when we lived over in Mound, and here we are now. So why door-to-door?
Well, Matt, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. We do have a great location here. Even though it's raining, it's always beautiful to see Lake
gorgeous.
Minnetonka. So, I think the best way this works, and when I mean this, that public service piece for me is going and talking, to my neighbors, my friends, and people I don't know, and asking them what's important to them. Because what I see too often is people aren't really listening. People aren't engaging. There's a lot of, this is what I'm about, but in this position for me, it's supposed to be what, is most important to the community. So when I get to those doors and I ask people what their priorities are, it can be from education to environment to affordability to, those probably half a dozen light bulbs I've changed within the local communities when I hear somebody complain about a street light out. But there's a big range, but I think that's the best way to kind of talk to people.
And how many doors have you knocked on so far this year?
So personally, a little over 4,000 doors.
And I'd love to have you selling pest control.
It's, sometimes when I show up to the doors, people will say, oh, what are you selling? And I'll kind of joke with them and say, oh, it's worse. It's politics, just to kind of break the ice a little bit. But, everybody's really receptive. And, of course, there's a lot of people that aren't home. So you always make sure to leave your information and my cell phone numbers on there. Because, again, I want people reaching out to me to share what's important to them. And for some people, it's really easy to just send me an email, send me a text, or give me a call. So.
And it's your cell phone number.
It is. Yep.
So that's really impressive to me. That's a lot of information to intake. So when you're out there, knocked on 4,000 doors, probably haven't had that many conversations, but when you talk to the residents in the area, what are the messages that you're really hearing as far as what's important to them?
Yeah. So, I could start first, and you had brought it up earlier, education, supporting our teachers and our community is really important. I'm a father of four. My kids go to Minnetonka. I know your kids go to Minnetonka too. We're blessed in that school. So I would hear education, affordability, and that's different for everybody. It could be healthcare costs. It could be, gas and car tab fees. It could be property taxes, just inflation maybe that way. Environment. I hear a lot of environment, having a big, beautiful lake here, and then the need for, some infrastructure improvements, clean water. I would hear community safety, supporting, our law enforcement from police to fire. And then maybe, the other big one is just, what can we do to reduce the divide? And honestly, people are like, I just need somebody that's not crazy, because what they see on the TV is crazy to people.
All crazy.
Versus, having these conversations, with my neighbors to talk about what's important to them.
Absolutely. Well, and you said it, our kids go to the same school. It's you're literally in the community, and you're interacting and engaging, and then you're taking all of this and you're bringing it to the Capitol, and that's where you're really kind of taking on that role where you have to help make decisions with everybody's best interests in mind. And that doesn't just include this half, right?
Correct.
So tell me like how you go about juggling those two sides, because it's kind of like polarizingly different, and politics can be that divide, right? So how do you kind of bring that together?
It can, and that's why I think, when I do so many doors and I do these events and, have booths at, events for, 6-8 hours at a time, so that I can really listen to people. Because I mean, when I talk to people, most of them will say, it's the 10% here and the 10% here that mess it up for the 80% of us. And so when you find those 4 or 5 things that are most important to everybody, then you're on the right track. And as I said, named a lot of those things for our district. People really get behind that, and it's people really get behind that, and that's from both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely. And so one of the big initiatives you've been pushing forward is the affordability, and like that's statewide, right? But for small businesses in the community, like how does that like impact the businesses like Maynard's on the lake, or like Abracadabra in the community that you're serving?
Yeah, there's a lot of impacts that we've seen both for small business owners and just, suburban families every day. They always say, oh, the cost of groceries and everything else. And I said, down there, I can't fix the cost of groceries, but, we can look at things to help, alleviate that family budget. I had a couple bills that would help reduce the gas tax, that would have, reduced car tab fees. These are small things to help balance out the budget, but also going and talking to these business owners that want to continue to grow responsibly. I mean, you have you own a business and have several employees, and as you grow, you want to make sure that you can hire good qualified people, and we've got to be able to talk to those business owners and look at more, in my eyes, those incentives versus some of those mandates. I hear too often that, one side is heavily on the workers, one side is heavily on the small businesses. I mean, if you run a business, that you have to have both. You've got to have labor supporting industry and industry supporting labor. If you don't have that, it's not going to work.
Well, and the small businesses really, like, their employees are the business. That's that's the human side and that interaction that they have with the community. So being able to really support them and the affordability of their living expenses is like, it's so important when small businesses like mine, like our number one cost is payroll. Like, and that's, I think for most businesses out there. So ensuring that government wide, we kind of manage that, like that makes my life a little bit easier. So appreciate that. So before we keep diving down into the real political government type of conversation, let's like back it up and like tell us a little bit about you and kind of like how you, like your story and how you got into law. You are a small business owner yourself, and you've been doing that for a while. So could you give us a little bit of your story? Yeah.
So, grew up in Illinois, ended up going to college and law school. And like, every law student, I needed a place to live and I didn't have any money, and it brought me to Minnesota. So I ended up living with my sister. I was in, Coon Rapids, and then took my first job in Red Wing. So I lived down there and actually got introduced to my wife, Amanda. Okay. And then, as I was working down there, I had an opportunity to take a job in Bloomington. So then we moved to Bloomington, Bloomington for a few years, and then out to this area where I, run a solo law practice. As I said, kids go to, have 4 kids. They go to Minnetonka. We love this area for the schools, the outdoors, the parks and trails.
Was that?
And my brother lived out in this area too. Okay. So it was kind of nice to have a little family.
For sure. So you kind of like you came in making decisions about, okay, this is the area I want to live in because of education and the environment and those type of things. So you kind of have that experience as well. And
it was funny because when we were looking out in this area, my brother had lived out here for years. He married a lady from Minnetonka, and we actually looked in a house in his community, and I made sure to call and say, hey, is it okay if we look at this house?
Yeah, we're like 5 doors down.
Maybe you don't want your brother living down the street from you. But we're, 12 years apart. And it was, he's like, yeah, go check it out. It's a great community. And that's the thing. This is a community I've seen, over 15 years, just people really coming together and supporting one another. And again, the schools, I mean, having kids, we want to make sure that we can provide those opportunities for them.
Definitely. So as you're going through law and that whole growing a business, did you always like have in the back of your mind, hey, I want to go into government and politics?
No, I mean, for me, there were things that I volunteered or donated my time for to give back. And, it was really, that public service piece that I got from my mom and my dad of just, trying to help your community. My dad was a small business owner, and he would, when people couldn't pay for things, he would provide the service himself. And, you see that, and it leads to that public service piece. And, during my time, out here in Lake Minnetonka, I served as a parks chair and a planning chair and a city council member. So, those jobs didn't pay. They actually cost me money because a lot of times you have to get a babysitter or whatever it was. But it was a good way to get to know your neighbors and what's important to them, and represent the people in your community.
And so, was that something that like your parents like actually talked about with you, or was that something that was more modeled for you from a behavior standpoint?
I would probably say it was more modeled. We grew up on like a small hobby farm, and we had an orchard and a really huge garden, and we'd, have a lot of our, fruits and vegetables we would get ourselves. But, you worked really hard, and if you had stuff left over, then you wanted to go and provide that to other people. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was probably something talked about too much. It was just through actions.
So now I know your kids are a little bit younger. You got a few that are older than my son, who goes to Excelsior, but are you having conversations like that with them? Because they're seeing dad, he's running a business and he's doing all this. Like,
yeah. So my 12-year-old and 10-year-old have been always wanting to go with me when I go to the food shelf and help out. As the kids have gotten older, it's harder to go and do those shifts, but we'll, in the summer, they'll do the food rescue with me. Friday morning, we'll go during the holidays, and serve meals through the West Tonka food shelf. I mean, they really like to do that. I mean, this year, they've actually gone door knocking with me, and I just send them on the other side of the street and have them give them somewhat of an idea and just say, your dad's running. They'd love to hear some priorities.
Experience to have.
Yeah, especially my 12-year-old is shy. My 10-year-old is like me, where she'll probably talk to anybody.
Yeah, you're having a conversation with somebody in line at the grocery store.
Yeah. And so it's been really good for her. And then when somebody gives her a priority, she'll run to the other side of the street. Oh, before I forget, I want to tell you what this person said. But I think that's important for them to be able to do that, and see that and talk to people. And like anything, I mean, the more you do it, I think it just gives them more opportunities for the future to be comfortable. I mean, this is something new for me. It's, a little uncomfortable. But, we want to do it because we want to talk to people.
And like, really, it's your family. There's not like some big, I don't know, like big hand of the party that's coming in and doing all this marketing and trying to help push your campaign, right? Like you're really doing that, like legit with your kids out there, like a small business owner would be trying to, like, it's almost like a business around giving back to everybody that you interact with. And that to me is like a beautiful thing. I think that's something a lot of small businesses, like if they really embrace that, they can support what they're trying to do. So kudos to you.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. It is kind of a family affair. I mean, I know I've, stopped by your door, and you're pulling a lot of late hours too. And, your wife's home, taking care of the kids and doing stuff in the community and getting them to their activities. And so, I'm sure she would like you home more, just like my wife would like me home more. But, it is a family affair from her. My wife a lot of times is putting, signs up with kids in the car. I mean, we have, some really dedicated people in this community, business owners, teachers, just volunteers that are helping. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times it's, getting to the door yourself. I mean, people want to know that you're out there,
that you're
truly
a real
listening.
Human,
not
a robot. Like he's a real guy. So you move into government, you're working just like within your local community, right? Like what was the thing where you're like, okay, I need to make this, like, I want to make it a little bit bigger. I want to impact more and serve a bigger community.
Yeah. I mean, that wasn't really in my mind. It was, serving my local city that I was in. And, you have to deal with, situations that arise that may impact other communities. But, my hat as a council member was to represent that one community. And so, that's what I did. I made sure that I do the research. I talked to the people that I need to, and I made some decisions that, were there to support my community. And then I just remember I was sitting at Urban Air trampoline park.
Love it.
Yeah, it was fun. And I got a phone call. I had my two of my daughters with me. I had to step outside, and the person introduced themselves, said, "Hey, I'm a current state rep, and somebody gave us your name and the way that you were handling some of these situations. We think you'd really do a good job representing the community." And I was like, what does a state rep do?
Yeah.
What's the time commitment? And I really need to talk to my wife. Yeah. And so, it was definitely not something I was like, yes. It was something that I just didn't know a lot about. I had never been involved in party politics at all. I voted like everybody else, but I was never involved in party politics because, again, for me, it's a public service piece. So it
wasn't about trying to go become a senator or like anything like that. Like you're really just trying to serve.
I want to be home as much as I can with my kids and my community. It is, and you got to be able to balance those things.
Yeah. And so how do you balance it?
First of all,
besides just having a wife and family that supports you.
Yeah. That'd be the main thing I would say is that, anybody, that gets involved in this, their spouses are, way more important. They've got to deal with the brunt of a lot of this stuff and not being there and the highs and lows sometimes. But yeah, it's definitely a balancing act between, my own job, my kids, the service I want to do and really having to you always want to say yes to things. But I've learned now that, I'm really, I have this tagline, representing your backyard. And that's what I want to do. I want to, be focusing on the priorities of the districts. I really try to stay focused on, the 11 communities that I serve, stay here. There's a lot of stuff outside the district. Doesn't mean that the policies that I pass or come up with don't impact the entire backyard of Minnesota. But I start here because I'm the representative here, so that's where it all starts for me.
But the communities here, it's not like there's this polarizingly different set of needs or interests, right? Yep. Like for the greater Minnesota community, like a lot of these things are similar threads that we're seeing, right? Yeah,
you'll have those little one-offs. Having 11 cities and 50 council members and mayors, there's a lot of feedback. Very interactive district. Get a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls, which keeps me busy that way. But there's been a lot of good ideas coming from just the general public, and that's what. Another piece that's really important to me is trying to have that humility and not always listening to what's happening in the dome. Maybe you trust, but you verify back at home. But we work with a lot of residents here on some of those, ideas from environment to education, to bring forward some good ideas.
So let's talk education. So with everything that's going on, where's the focus going to be for the next few years as far as education?
Yeah. So for me, near and dear to my heart, as I said, 4 kids, but everybody's impacted by education. You're either homeschool, private school, or public school. And we got to find those opportunities where to support them. What I will say is working with a lot of teachers, I've heard the feedback that, why aren't people listening to us? Why aren't people coming to our classroom? They're the ones that have to implement these things for themselves and for our kids and for our community, which kind of have led me down a path of, what can I do to amplify the voice of educators? Every one of my kids has a favorite teacher. There's those teachers that make a huge impact in our lives, which led me to a bill called the Boots on the Ground bill. It kind of goes back to the listening in the dome versus we should be listening back at home. So what the bill did was required anybody sitting on an education finance or policy committee to shadow a teacher for 12 hours. And, when I went and talked to those teachers, like, this is awesome. This is amazing. This is what we need. We need these legislators to be able to see what bills they pass, the impact it has, but also allow them to be a little bit more proactive to say, go meet with these teachers, sit in their classrooms, see the everyday occurrence of what's happening. And then that may help provide better, solutions to what's happening, and that's, direct, flexible, resources for schools. Because I've learned a lot. West Tonka schools are very different than Minnetonka schools. They don't need the exact same thing. We have school boards, we have superintendents, we have teachers in those schools, and they're all a little bit different. And so giving those opportunities for them to use those funds, I think can, really help those schools out the way they need them.
Absolutely. So just for me and probably some of our listeners, like, what's the process of like putting a bill together like that?
So typically if you draft a bill, you figure out what the topic's going to be. You work with your, the people that are advocating for it. On my boots on the ground bill, it was, a lot of teachers. At that time, then you go to the revisor's office down at the Capitol, and they're kind of the smartest people down there. They know all the current laws and they know how to draft them best. And you say, this is what I'm looking to do. This is the bill we're trying to achieve. They'll then put a bill together. So if I was to draft one and I get it back from them, there's a House jacket and there's a Senate jacket. My House jacket I will sign. I will ask other people if they want to sign on to it, Republican or Democrat. A lot of these bills are bipartisan that we try to get done because that's the best way to do it. You build that support, and you drop it in the hopper. It's on the House side, and then you have to go over to the Senate side and find a senator to carry it. If it's an education bill, of course, you're trying to find somebody on the education committee because it's a little bit easier to get a committee hearing. But once that gets dropped, then you go to the chair for that committee. So if it's education, you ask and you request a hearing. If they give you a hearing, then you will sit, in front of the entire committee, and you can have testifiers with you. And then the testifiers will say, this is why we think this is a really good bill. It's proactive, whatever.
So essentially present your case
and then
proposal together.
If it passes out committee, meaning if a majority of the people vote for it, then it can either go into a standalone bill or it can go into a larger omnibus bill. And we've seen to kind of see more of these really large omnibus bills that, could be 10 bills in one omnibus bill, could be 300 bills. So
when that's done, is like the purpose around like having fewer individual conversations, or like why put it all in an omnibus bill as opposed to like just going through each one?
Yeah, I mean, being a new member down there, there's, some stuff that I don't know everything. I mean, of course, I think most people, I believe, probably want us to look at these bills individually, vote on them so they really know where the representative stands on certain things. When you get a big, omnibus bill and you say, oh man, this bill's, 60% okay. For some people, they may say, well, then I can't vote for it. Or for other people, they may say, yeah, I can vote for it. I think most people want to probably get away from those much larger bills. And that's not to say that there isn't times for an education bill that you can have an omnibus bill that has 10 bills in it, because that's not huge.
That seems more practical than 300.
We had at the end of this session, a 1,500 page bill. I don't know how you vote yes or no on something like that. I think that can be frustrating. Because how can you read something that's that big? And it's including so many things. And so I don't know if it's a time management. I don't know if it's, I think it ultimately takes away the opportunity to get more bipartisan support. That's my take on it.
But it's kind of part of the hand you're dealt, it seems like, and you can't necessarily control that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can continue to advocate and say, hey, let's just, I'd rather have, 300 votes on the House floor for 300 individual bills than, 30 votes on the floor. Again, but everybody's kind of got, different priorities, different people, different constituents that they're representing in their district. I mean, I've got a good friend that's a rep in St. Paul, and we look at things very different. I respect his housing needs that he has in St. Paul, and he's been out here and respects the housing needs that we need. I mean, and they're very different. I try to work with him and say, again, let's not mandate this stuff. If there's stuff you need, let's incentivize it for St. Paul. But if we don't need it over here, we don't need to do it.
So that's just like a lot of like conversation around modifications and concessions to this bill that's kind of being presented. Is that ever like really confusing?
Yeah, it can be, because that bill, even leaving the House floor, can go to what is, if the Senate version, the House version is different at the end, then it goes to a conference committee, and that conference committee has the final say. And so things can change even at the end into that bill. I sat on, as a first, term legislator, I sat on 2 conference committees as the only Republican, because
So did you have to like sit off in the corner by yourself?
No. I mean, you're around, the larger conference room there, and, you're trying to see if there's ways to find common ground. And I'm always looking to, I don't get up on the floor on third reading speeches and make these big, huge statements. For me, it's really about trying to find those amendments on a bill idea that is good. But either I've talked to a lot of people, small business owners, teachers, mental health counselors, law enforcement, and say, we can make this bill a little bit better. Would you bring this amendment? And working with them, because at the end of the day, some of these bills are going to pass, and I feel like it's my job to highlight some of the things that we can make them a little bit better. Does that work all the time? No, but, in those 2 conference committees, I got some stuff adopted, which was great. I appreciated the opportunity to be on there. And I think I was on there because, they know I'm willing to work, find common ground. I'm not there to beat people up. I'm there to try to find solutions.
Rather than, this is what the party said, I have to vote, so that's what I'm going to do. You're actually like problem solving.
Yeah, and I actually bring in, my own amendments that I've talked to other people about that weren't heard on the floor initially. These are new things to try to get people to think, okay, maybe this is, he is really trying in this particular bill.
Do you have any examples you could give of that?
A really small example that got taken was, when a part of the landlord tenant bill was going to go into effect. And a lot of time you have all these dates all over the place and everything else. And if you're a housing provider, you can't just kind of snap your fingers sometimes and be able to change all these leases, change all these things. So there was one for a much later date. So I had offered an amendment to say, guys, if we want this to work, in real life, you're going to have to give a little bit more time. You can't just snap your fingers. And in that situation, they took that amendment, which was great, but it was all about, for me, it's execution of these bills.
It can't just be theory. Like, we got to be able to take it and go and do something.
And I've seen things down there where maybe they're studied for, 5, 6, 7. There was, one bill in labor and industry that, the state's been studying it for 10 years, and they passed it, and they wanted businesses to implement it in 60 days. And I said, guys, you've been talking about it for 10 years.
Yeah.
How can you expect business owners and maybe the larger business owners have a huge HR department and it's easier for them, but I don't know how big your HR department is, but some of these,
we have one.
So it's one person. And, if we don't look at it and say, okay, businesses under 50 or whatever that threshold is, get more time, get a concession to try to, we don't want to have to fine anybody. We want to make sure that people have enough time, reasonable time to execute on this stuff.
Well, in the communities you're serving, when it comes to businesses, like, we don't have like these massive companies out here, right? So you really are like supporting the small businesses, because that's what exists out here.
Yeah.
So like, are there legislative changes that you would like to see come down the pipe that could impact the small businesses in the area around here?
Yeah, one of the bills I drafted was, an incentive base for hiring. It would give, a tax deduction to businesses for hiring more people. It was a small business one. It was under 50, but, in my own business, I see that some of these restrictions have made it very difficult for my clients, that maybe have an idea and say, hey, I got a new idea. Maybe I can make an extra, $25,000 or $50,000 on this. But because of, the hill that they have to climb or the restrictions, then we're missing out on those new ideas, innovative ideas, or those services.
Yep.
Because some people are maybe a little more hesitant or a little more scared. And I think Minnesota has traditionally had a really good environment in the past for small business owners. But I think we're seeing that shift a little bit to where people are a little more hesitant to be moving forward with ideas. They're just like, okay, I'm just not going to try anything new. I'm going to stay in this lane. We're going to stay this size. And you want to see businesses grow. Your business is a great example. You've done a great job growing that business. And for that
started.
Well, yeah. But how I look at that, it wasn't like you started at 10 employees and a month later you're at 100. It is responsible growth. Like that's what we want. And there's things that we can do at a state level to help these small businesses, especially like yours and other ones in our communities.
And really talking to business owners like myself and Jack and other business owners around here, that allows you to be able to really understand what's going on there. And for us, sometimes like help me understand what's going on in the Dome and how that impacts us. Yeah. So could you touch a little bit on that side of it?
Yeah. And that, you'd love to be able to see more business co-owners or business owners come in and testify, to share their experiences. One thing I really do, and I think it's been really helpful, and it doesn't matter what the group is, but I'll take a meeting with anybody. It could be, over here, it could be over here, but my door is always open because at the end of the day, I'm going to have to vote on these things. And I want to give anybody and everybody an opportunity. And even, when people come in, they will leave, and they'll say, Andrew, man, you really kind of helped us out with our pitch. And, you had some really good ideas, because my mind is so business related. No matter who I'm talking to, not only do I do legal stuff, but I help businesses, grow and be proactive about, what they're going to do for the future. That I always tell people, if I vote for your proposal, then I want you to say, great, he was behind that. That was awesome. If I don't, I want you to say, oh man, he didn't vote for that, but he really helped with our pitch and made it better for, for future legislators that they talk to. Because if we don't have an open process of sharing ideas, then I think we've seen that we miss things or we have to go back and fix things. And we're not perfect. None of us are. But we want to make sure that, if we have that open conversation, that I think it helps us address potential challenges we see in some of these bills.
So you talked a little bit about like what you do day to day and like planning for the future in your business. Yeah. We haven't really touched on what you actually do, like for your full-time job. Could you kind of tell us a little bit about really what you come in and help business owners accomplish?
Yeah. So, licensed attorney, represent a lot of small business owners, individuals with business transactional, corporate formation, LLC formation, real estate planning. I've got a client meeting later today where, we're dealing with a lot of different things. We're dealing with some employee theft issues that we have to deal with. We're dealing with how to work with a growing client that they have and some of the needs that they have. And one of those requests is asking, what's your business succession plan? It's an older business owner and the client wants to make sure that they keep the business. So that we have to be able to show them, okay, this is going to be a family run business. The son will be taking over. So we look at some of those things to ensure that, that my client can keep their client as their business grows. But even, just starting a business for people, depending if it's, is an LLC better for them, as a corporation, as an S corporation, how many employees, if they have accounting questions, typically try to get that to the...
You're not an accountant.
No, I'm not an accountant. My joke is always, my favorite client would be one that wins the lottery and comes, what should I do with all the money? But again, I'm not an accountant. So you got to go talk to the accountants that way. But, it's a lot of just like everyday operations, employment, law. And then you get to the people that need help with their estate plans for families, making sure you kind of have that peace of mind of being able to address that. and then just real estate stuff around here, both residential and commercial. Again, and there's a lot of pieces that go into it. I end up getting brought in though to some of the, is this a good rate of return? How do you work with these local communities, for development, stuff like that.
So what you're doing, like in your day to day, you kind of take that and zoom it out a little bit and look at like the macro side of it when you got your state rep pants on for the day. So like that type of planning and thinking, is that like just something that you've learned over the years, or are you always kind of thinking 2, 3, 4 years down the road?
Right now for me, it's, being able to enjoy my family and enjoy our district, watch the kids grow up. My 6-year-old is super excited because she's finally getting into gymnastics tomorrow. So, I'll be able to take her and she's been practicing so hard to get into that. But it's the balance of trying to do it all. For me, it is working to kind of bring the community together, listen to people, but at the end of the day, you balance out your work, your family, and your public service.
And it's a lot to balance. So you touched on like early businesses and kind of the formation and structure of that. Do you have any advice you'd give to somebody that's looking to start a business like in our local community here?
Yeah. What's really important is, making sure you have that dedication and resolve. I again, like yourself, there's going to be a lot of bumps and bruises along the way, and that's life. I think we've all seen that, and you got to be able to weather those, storms with, people around you. But sitting down with a business plan, it's trying to figure out, what's the product, what's the service, what's the market look like, what can you bring that's different? Because I think there is a need for, that customer service piece that every business can bring something a little bit different, be innovative. And that's what I want to see more of. Minnesota, and medical related, both devices and both from a healthcare perspective. I'd love us to kind of get back a little bit to where we saw some of that growth, but it's starting with that business plan to see what you're doing. And again, every business is different. If it's something that you need investors to start, if you need cash dollars versus you need a piece of equipment, a truck, and yourself, they're all very different. But
that almost sounds like business strategy and like you're helping people with that at times. The more I talk to you, the more I just like you kind of echo like a visionary type of role. Like you're all about innovation and like planning for the future. And I think for somebody in your role, that's like exactly what we're looking for. So let's touch on marketing a little bit.
Sure.
So with effective marketing, So how important has effective marketing been in communicating your legislative success, like the Keep It Clean Act, to your constituents? Yeah,
so marketing, like everything, is really important. And I would also say, I'll say politics, but so it's a little more clarified. But I always, for me, it is public service. People are so busy with their everyday lives. It's so hard to you've got to go where people are at. And for most people, it's get your kids to school, it's go to work, get them to their activities. And then it's, date night once a week with your spouse. Yeah. So the other stuff is, how do you get it to them? That marketing is a lot of things. It's mailers, it's digital, it's the door knocking, it's lit dropping, it's word of mouth. It's, I've got corn days this Saturday, we'll have a parade out there. We're debating on also kind of doing an ice cream social. It's town halls. I just had my 20th town hall over at the Caribou in Long Lake. Maybe you get 5 people at one and you get 20 people at the other. But I think that starts to get out there, that the willingness to have those conversations. And those town halls are like this. We literally sit at a table.
Have a conversation.
And we have a conversation. I'm not sitting up there and people are, feeding me questions. There may be questions of, somebody to somebody else. And you get to see how they look at it differently. And for me, it's always interesting because everybody has background and experience that the other person can't take away from them. I can't take away from them. And we have to, allows us to think more and more of like, okay, this is impacting people different ways. But yeah, I mean, marketing's, tough. There's nothing efficient that I have seen. And so you have to do so many things. I don't know. I guess I would ask that question of you, like for marketing.
Marketing?
Yeah.
Do a lot of things, like you said, but really the way we think about marketing is like what's important to people, kind of like what you're talking about, because that's where their attention is. Marketing is all about like arbitrage of attention. So if people's attention is on social media, marketing through social media, depending on if you know your demographic or not, like that could be really effective. But being able to capture just a little bit of that to have any type of message or branding, that's what it's all about. And like thinking about marketing less from the standpoint of, hey, we have this amount of capital, we need to put it into marketing. Like it can't really just be we need to check this box, because you can waste a lot of dollars there. And when you're talking a campaign, like those dollars are important. Like that's what allows you to do what you're doing. So making sure that you have feedback loops for all that's really important too. But understanding the initiatives and timelines, like this time of year, there's a lot of people that are getting mailers like that. So like, how do you make it different? Yeah. Right. How do you what are the things that make my piece of marketing look a little different than somebody else's?
And one thing one thing that really pops into my mind, and I'll use you as an example, is when you did your logo and your branding change. So now you see those trucks, right away. I mean, I literally, when I door knock.
Thank you for saying that.
Well, I was like, when I door knock and I'm like, oh, yeah, there's abracadabra. Like I see it. I mean, it's. Well,
and we really are serving the same community, right? And at the logo change was really part of us bringing some new blood and a new mission as I took it over from my father-in-law. But having something like that helps us become more known in the community. Yeah. It's like your face or the Andrew Meyers logo that you kind of have that. You see it everywhere. Now there's a level of permanence in your mind. So for us, being that we're serving all these communities, we do a lot of the giving back and try to make it that public service and less the transactional side of things. For you, going in, I need your vote. That's very transactional, but you're not doing that. And we try to just meet people where they're at. And in the Midwest, I've found that people want to know you, and they really give back to small business and love supporting the local community. Yeah. So we're so grateful for the support we've got. And it's from the same people that have supported your campaign and everything that you've done so far. So it's a special community out here, man.
It is. And that always leads me to a lot of conversations at the door too, of how our community has really come together. And the prime example for me is that, the West Tonka Food Shelf. Mm-hmm. There's, 160 volunteers working shifts, doing food rescue, and food insecurity is, important to our community, and it's important to me. It's a great way to give back. And I advocated for it quite a bit down at the Capitol, because it's not only a metro or a rural thing, it's in the suburbs too.
Well, and a lot of people think, Lake Minnetonka, they don't think food shelf with that thread. So that need being there, if you weren't in the community, you wouldn't know that existed.
Yeah. And and we gave out, I think 1.4 million pounds of food, on a $500,000 budget. I know there's similar organizations around here that their budgets are $3 million for the same amount of food. Mm-hmm. It goes to show, call it efficiency, but it's more of our community coming together and helping one another, to address that need.
And that's really what I've seen is so many different examples I can put out there, but a community rallying around an initiative or an organization. I've fallen in love with the communities out here. Not growing up in this area, it was very new when we came out here, but the amount of support and true community, it's impressive. And more people engaging with that rather than being deterred, I think is kind of what would just continue that thread.
Yeah, I'm always trying to say to people, oh, reach out to the executive director. You guys can help participate too. I mean, it's just a great way to get to know people in the community and bring people together.
Well, and like giving back financially, that's one way, but like time is one of the biggest things that has a cost to it anyway. So people just contributing their time to things like that, or choosing to do business with a small business in the community, like that all feeds the health of the community. Yeah. And you get to see that at a high level with these conversations you're part of and the data that you're presented. So I think having somebody that has all that information, has the experience, and then can come back and like be boots on the ground, no pun intended, but like really have that activity. That's pretty special. Like I haven't really seen it or heard of it in other communities, but there's a reason why people from Lake Minnetonka keep coming back to Lake Minnetonka because it's special. And that's one thing that's helped us grow a lot as a small business is that type of support.
Yeah.
So let's talk clean water.
Sure.
So that's like one of the most important things for life to exist anyway. Obviously, we've got a lot of beautiful water here, but clean water is something that's really important. So can you touch a little bit on like what's kind of led up to the conversations you're having nowadays and what you're trying to push towards moving forward?
Yeah. Again, growing up on a farm and growing food and, seeing that cycle, you see how important that is. But, and then knowing that in this community, that's really important to them too. And that's both environment and clean water. What do you think of when you think of Minnesota? I mean, 10,000 lakes.
Yeah, a lot of water.
Yeah, a lot of water. And I know there's more than 10,000 lakes, but yeah, a lot of water. And that's kind of the traditional values. And, we want to go ice fishing in the winter. We want to go, snowmobiling, be outside. You want to fish, you want to swim. My daughter ran over to a neighbor's and actually was swimming in the lake, yesterday. Having those experiences and growing up, I mean, we all have them, right? And, knowing how important that is, it is surprising sometimes though with, the affordability, but also the lack of clean water or the issues with clean water out here in a few of my communities that need to be addressed. And that's, through either, phosphorus reduction, these policies and infrastructure, which
costs a lot of money.
Yeah, it does cost a lot of money, and not everybody can address it right at their house. But to me, that's probably one of the essential things that in my role we should be providing to people. It impacts our kids, our pets, ourselves. Yeah. And so being able to address that, and that was one of the things I heard when I was in Mound, so every time I would door knock in Mound, 2 years ago, about 15,000 doors, and you would walk up to those houses and you would see either cases of bottled water, you would see, Culligan bottles, you'd be getting text message from people like, look at my bathtub, how am I supposed to use this? But, you would hear that at the door. And so that was for sure one of the biggest things that you would see and hear, and that you tried to advocate for down there, because they've been trying to advocate for it for 5 or 6 years, which led to we got a bonding bill done, and we secured a third of the money that they need to start with that project, which was a little over $10 million. But it's something that we need to continue to support. And there was also some opportunity for some funds from the federal level through Dean Phillips's office, which, Mound secured as well, which was great at looking at all these potential opportunities, because it's hard to come up with $30 million within a community and make, property taxes and other things affordable.
Well, and then even if you get the 30 million, like it doesn't stop there. Like this is still going to be something that there's going to need focus and additional resources put into. So your ability to like be able to source that, like that is huge for our community.
Yeah. And I think at the, sitting on the capital investment committee, I mean, I'd almost like to see maybe there's different pockets of standalone infrastructure bills that maybe one of those would be dedicated to clean water. Again, Minnesota is water. It's that's what you see almost everywhere you go. And so, trying to take some of the politics out of it and say, raise your hand if you support clean water. Everybody's going to raise their hand. So let's try to figure out, maybe a bucket for, infrastructure dollars that we can address those things. I know my community would love it.
Yeah. And it's probably not the only one out here. So outside of clean water education and like the local small business, are there any other things that you're like really passionate about going into the next couple of years?
Yeah, for me, again, it's going to be continuing to listen and learn what's important to my community. And that is, environment, as you said, education, affordability, and some of the bigger pictures of community safety. And that's kind of been a statewide piece, maybe a little bit more Hennepin County. I hear that at the door. There is that priority that we say, what are we doing to support our law enforcement officers? What are we doing to support our EMS and our paramedics, stuff like that, and recruit and retain. I mean, I think talking about being proactive or being innovative, I mean, there's certain things that we need to look at as leaders, and that is, what do our communities need in the next 5 or 10 years? Teachers, mental health counselors, community safety officers. What are we doing though to make sure that we have those? What are we doing to incentivize those people to, take care of my parents as they get older, your parents, stuff like that. And I think, those are the things, those investments are going to pay off for the future. And that's kind of where I'm, looking at.
Yeah. But being able to invest and like think down the line, like that takes a lot of conversation for everybody, because not everybody's in that like innovative, like proactive thought process.
Yeah. And what I really try to do is listen to those rural members and listen to those metro members, because again, there's different priorities. Like just like we talked about with housing. I mean, rural workforce housing is really important. Metro, from my other representatives that I talk to is like, there's opportunities for 20-story buildings, to house people. Out here, it's a little bit, more affordable townhouses. Everybody doesn't need a 4,000 square foot house. There's, how do we get into some of those starter homes for people? Stuff like that.
For sure. So we do a lot of work within like the commercial real estate space in St. Paul, from the big office buildings and then like all the retail and medical that's kind of scattered around all there. So through some of that, we've learned a lot of like how important the success of the downtown areas really are. And out of COVID and George Floyd, like there's been some things that were going like not in the right direction for the community. Could you talk a little bit about like how that impacts the greater Twin Cities metro? And then like, I know there's been a lot of progress that's happened and changes that are being made because Minneapolis and St. Paul are both moving in the right direction. But any thoughts on like why it's kind of moved that way and the trajectory changing? Yeah,
I mean, what I do here at the doors and my own sentiment is, Minneapolis brings a lot to our state. It has I remember coming to visit my brother, 20 some years ago versus being in, growing up in Illinois. I'd go to Chicago and Chicago was, at that time really dirty. It wasn't the easiest place to get around. And I remember coming to Minneapolis, usually always in the wintertime for school breaks or something. But, you could go, down there, it was really clean. You could walk through all the skyways. You could do, all that stuff. And, we've kind of seen a shift a little bit where, it's gotten where some people, don't want to go down there. But at the same time, they say, we don't want to give up because it is kind of the mecca for what we are. If culturally, music, food, we want to continue to invest in that. But, I think from what we've seen, it's going to take some time to do that. And time isn't 1, 2, 3 years. I think it's going to be much longer. And we want those businesses, we want, the people down there to be successful, because if that area flourishes, then the suburbs are going to flourish, and the rest of, Minnesota is too.
Well, and then like the sports teams and all that, like those bigger organizations and businesses, like that can drive a lot of that other success, right?
Yeah.
So have you seen those larger businesses kind of get behind the initiatives that are happening at the Capitol?
Yeah, I mean, I know, those organizations are looking for opportunities to invest, both as a partnership, public-private, which in certain opportunities are a really good thing. If we can have those partnerships that are truly an investment that are going to help with the cities and the communities surrounding them. I mean, again, those sports teams we were down there, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago for a baseball game.
I was just down there yesterday at Twins game.
I mean, it's fun, and it's, you can't do a ton of those games, but you get down there when you can, and it's just those memories that you build with the kids.
Well, and the more I've traveled, the more I've realized how lucky we are to have all of the major sports teams right kind of in one area.
Yeah, we're not Iowa.
Yeah, there's a couple on this side of the river and a couple on that side of the river, but we've got them all.
Yeah.
And that, from what I've seen, is impacting a lot of why people want to go down there. It's still a reason to want to go into the cities, even if there's that thought of, I don't feel safe down there, but that's going away now because people are actually experiencing it because they're going to these games. That type of loyalty that people have for Vikings, Twins, stuff like that, that's not going to die just because it's in Minneapolis.
We know that's not going to die because we're still trying to win a Super Bowl. But
so is there anything else you want to say? As you're working on your campaign, we're going into that season. Is there anything that you want to make sure is out there that people know?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, it is really about, I think we have a couple more town halls coming up. It's on the website. No one party, no one person has all the answers. And I see it every day in my community is that they want us working together, kind of finding that common ground, finding those policies that provide balance down here. And again, that's 80% of the people I talk to, if not more. Let's try to get rid of the political noise from the national and make it get back to public service locally. I mean, you do a lot of stuff for the community, and you're my typical neighbor. I mean, that's, that
maybe without the dreadlocks, but
that's fine. It's people want to have those interactions. Our kids play together or they play sports against each other, just whatever we can kind of do to reduce the divide. But that also means to, participate, ask questions. If you have ideas, share them. I've had a few good ideas, but most of the ideas come from the general public. And when you engage with them and, amplify their voice, I think then that really helps the process overall down at the Capitol.
Because then you're actually communicating what's important instead of some agenda you have.
Yep. And at the end of the day, I mean, there'll be people that don't vote for me, and that's okay. But I still try to hit every single one of those doors because it is really important for me to say, I'm Andrew, I'm a business owner, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and, I live in Tonka Bay. I just live right down the road from you. We all go to Maynard's or Fletcher's or wherever it is.
Absolutely. Well, and I don't think I've ever told you this, but so when you came and knocked on our door the first time, our son goes to the Chinese immersion school over in Excelsior because of the conversation that you had with my wife at that point. So I've seen and felt that impact that you're making on individuals within the community, because now a lot of our life is built around this opportunity that we never would have known had you not knocked on our door. So that type of impact on a bigger scale, I know there's other stories like that out there where people just don't know some piece of information, and you're not here trying to sell anybody. You're just having a dialogue and learning. I feel like I should have shared that with you before.
So
now my son can speak Mandarin. That's pretty cool.
My kids can. I know Pinghua, I think, and I probably said it wrong, which is apple. But it's, and that's the thing. We have great schools in West Tonka and Wayzata and Orono and Minnetonka and a lot
some
of them
the
around
best
the
in
state.
The state,
right? I'm interested. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Well, now you do. And all of the Minnetonka School District and the schools out here, they're top tier. And that is like outside of the small business. A lot of the reason people want to come here is because of that.
Yeah.
So like, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for the time you took out of your day to come out here. The storm might be clearing up a little
I know.
bit. It's pretty beautiful out there right now. Just want to shout out to the Maynard's team and also give them a big thank you for giving us this opportunity. They're in there getting ready for the week already. So we'll be putting this out and we'll make sure that everybody gets to hear some of this story. But it sounds like if somebody has a question or they want to talk, you're very available for that to happen. So if there is anybody that's listening in our local community, like reach out, because then that gives you more information. And maybe there's something that they don't know that's already going on that you could just bridge that information gap.
Yeah, and it's important. Having those 11 cities, what's happening in Long Lake can be very different than what's happening in Minnetrista to Excelsior to Greenwood to Minnetonka Beach to Tonka Bay. I mean, but it helps me to then focus on those things. So yeah, I mean, if anybody's ever wanting to, get a hold of me, my cell phone number is 612-615-8444. My wife always grimaces when I do that, but, or when I do it at the council meetings. But I mean, this is how it should work, I think, trying to be available, willing to listen and finding that common ground, just like everything I try to do.
Yeah. Well, it's awesome to see it, and I get to experience it firsthand. And we're seeing the impacts in our community too. So thanks for giving back to the community and everything that you do. We're really looking forward to see how everything shakes out in the future. But the town halls you have coming up, you said those were on your website as well.
On the website.
And do you kind of move those around to different communities?
Yeah, so I try to do, I think the next one is in Navarre or Tonka Bay, but I will have to check. But yeah, we'll go out to, Mocha Monkey and St. Bonnie, the Caribou, the Dunn Brothers, the Lobby and Excelsior. We try to, again, go and meet people where they're at with the focus. If you're in Orono, you're probably not driving out to Excelsior to the coffee shop. So
you got to go into that community and really hear from it. Well, thanks again, Andrew. Appreciate you coming on the Homegrown Hustle. Thanks everybody for joining us for this special episode. Andrew is somebody that is really bringing an impact into the communities, and I thought it really important for us to kind of talk to him and just see a little bit of the human side of him and what he's doing with his business. So I hope you all enjoyed it. Feel free to drop a like, share it, and go out there and engage within your local government and local community, because that's the type of action that we need to really make change. We can all talk about things, but if you're not going out there and putting it to work, it's just conversation. So thanks again, Andrew. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Hey, everybody, State Representative Andrew Meyers. I have a goal every single day, and that is to hit 50 doors, asking your priorities. And what that does is it helps us reduce the divide by focusing on those things most important to you. So what I would say is if you want to share your priorities, reach out to me. You can email me at andrew@voteandrewmyers.com or call or text me at 612-615-8444. See you at the doors.
That's great.
Thanks again for joining us on Homegrown Hustle. Our local business community thrives because of the brilliant leaders right here in our backyard. And it's been an absolute privilege to provide them with a platform to share their invaluable expertise. Stay tuned for more insight, wisdom, and inspiration from our local business champions. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Together, we'll continue to nurture and expand our homegrown success stories. Matt Eichmann signing off until our next insightful episode.